In 48 BCE, the forces of Julius Caesar set fire to the Egyptian fleet docked in the harbor of Alexandria. The flames allegedly spread from the waterfront to the city, engulfing the Great Library and instantly incinerating up to 700,000 scrolls of ancient knowledge. Many cultures still believe this specific inferno wiped out the wisdom of antiquity and directly caused the onset of the Dark Ages. However, the historical record indicates the library vanished over centuries through a slow process of decay, a timeline that long outlived Caesar and has no causal link to the fall of the Roman Empire. Ancient historians frequently employed dramatic hyperbole, inflating troop numbers, exaggerating city sizes, and the scale of royal book collections to impress their readers. Once we strip away the myth of the apocalyptic fire, a more complex mystery remains. How did the world's most famous library actually die, and what did we truly lose? This chart compares the estimated output of known classical authors against that legendary 700,000 figure. To reach that, they'd need dozens of redundant copies of every text. Calculating realistic shelf space, historians estimate the library's true peak capacity at 40 to 50,000 scrolls. We know this collection was actively managed because a scholar named Callinicus created the Pnyx, a massive 120-roll catalog that organized the collection by author and subject. The Great Library was a practical, finite institution governed by physical space and real-world logistics. Even at its height, Alexandria never held a monopoly on human thought. The idea that all classical knowledge existed in one vulnerable location is a modern projection. Rival institutions dotted the Mediterranean. Imperial archives in Rome and the Library of Pergamum held copies of the exact same plays, histories, and scientific treatises. Because this data was decentralized across the empire, a fire in a single Egyptian city could not have erased an entire civilization's intellectual progress. The Great Library faced a relentless internal threat, the structural fragility of the papyrus scroll. Woven from plant stems, papyrus is an incredibly brittle organic material. Mediterranean humidity, mice, and insects constantly gnawed away at these rolls, often destroying the physical text in a matter of decades. To survive these elements, the library required a continuous army of scribes on a copying treadmill, manually reproducing rotting texts before the ink faded into illegibility. Maintaining the archive was a feat of constant human labor and massive state funding, rather than a one-time effort of construction. For centuries, the Ptolemaic kings poured royal wealth into this copying operation. But when Egypt was absorbed into the Roman Empire, the library lost its royal patronage and its primary source of funding. Simultaneously, the ancient world shifted from the brittle papyrus scroll to the parchment codex, a bound book made from durable animal skin. Producing parchment was an incredibly expensive process. The high cost of this format shift forced librarians to become highly selective about which texts were worth the investment of preservation. This created an ideological filter. Works were only copied into the durable new codex format if they matched the new academic and religious priorities of the era. Unselected texts were simply left on collapsing shelves to rot into oblivion as the physical papyrus reached the end of its natural lifespan. The death of the Great Library proves that knowledge is a living thing that requires constant, active labor to survive. When a society loses the will to maintain its archives, those archives simply vanish. In the end, the world's greatest collection of wisdom was lost to the silence of neglect.